Welcome back to Politics Nation. An explosive report from the Boston Globe today reports that just as Willard Mitt Romney was leaving the governor's office, his top staff members destroyed all electronic records from their computers. Quote, 11 of his top aides purchased their state-issued computer hard drives, and the Romney administration's emails were all wiped from a server. And the computers that weren't purchased, they were replaced just before the next governor, Deval Patrick, and his staff showed up to take power in January 2007. State employees buying their work computers, that's a new one on me. Romney's chief legal counsel said it was common practice in the governor's office, and quote, those purchases were in performance with the law and with long-standing executive branch practice. In Massachusetts, they're supposed to hand over electronic records when the governor leaves office. Seems very fishy to me. Joining me now is Glenn Johnson, political editor of the Boston Globe website, Boston.com. He's been writing about this today for the Boston Globe. Glenn, thank you for being here with me tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on, Al.
Now, let me make sure I have this right. Romney's administration let employees buy the computers they used at work in state-level jobs that had information on them that should have been saved for public records.
Yeah, it wasn't just the computers, which I think people could probably wrap their head around. It was actually the hard drive component of some computers that in some cases was bought. So it wasn't just like selling somebody a laptop that they could use in another job. It was them taking a component out of a computer, a hard drive, and purchasing it on their own.
Now, wouldn't some of the things in the hard drive and those computers contain public record, public information that the state should have had access to, the citizens of the state of Massachusetts?
Well, in some senses, it's a public record. It was they were obviously government documents. This communication back and forth between government officials and on government equipment was definitely government records. Whether it's public is a whole different story. The state public records law doesn't apply to the governor's office. It also doesn't apply to the legislature, which wrote the law. But there's another section of state law which says that government records must be preserved. So even though the public might not have had ready access to anything on these hard drives, it should have been preserved for archival purposes, and it wasn't, apparently.
Now, have you been able to find any other case where this has happened in gubernatorial administrations aside from this one?
Yeah, well, as we work our way back to the computer era here, so far we've gone to the two prior administrations, the administration of Governor Jane Swift, another Republican, and the administration of Paul Cellucci, a Republican himself. And the people that we've talked to today, none of them, ever bought their computers or at least bought the hard drives out of them. So while the Romney people say that this was standard practice, perhaps they're referring to the practice of replacing computers in the governor's office before a new administration comes in. But certainly we've seen no precedent for this idea of taking hard drives out of computers and selling them to staffs for $65 a piece. That seems unique.
Do officials that you spoke with think that this is legal?
Well, certainly the Secretary of State says that the records should have been preserved, and that part of it, that's the question where was there a violation of the law if any documentation that was on these hard drives wasn't preserved and passed on to the state archives. The transaction in and of itself, there's canceled checks for it, and that all seems perfectly legal, and I don't think anybody's alleging that that's illegal. There is some question about how usual or unusual it is, but not that the actual sale of the device was illegal itself.
And the Romney camp, I understand, is not too happy that you've written this. Tell us about their response.
Well, I mean, they basically say that this is standard practice, and what they've done is immediately pivot, and they've now launched into an attack on the people that brought this to light. The Deval Patrick administration is being peppered right now with public records requests about Mitt Romney, and as a part of that, when people started asking for these emails, they found that they didn't exist. They issued a statement yesterday saying they don't exist, and now the Romney campaign is accusing the Deval Patrick administration of conducting dirty tricks, doing the dirty work of the Obama administration by bringing this to light. They note that Governor Deval Patrick, Mitt Romney's successor, is a very close friend of the president's, and they say that he's trying to embarrass.
Okay, so let me just get this right before I let you go. People have been making requests for public records of Romney's term in office as governor. The present governor, in responding to why they didn't have some of those requests, explained what happened to some of it. And of course, Willard's people are now saying that the governor is not just responding to saying why he can't produce these things. It's all of a sudden a conspiracy that President Obama's behind.
That's been the line of attack this afternoon. The campaign manager for Mitt Romney wrote a letter to the governor of Massachusetts this afternoon, putting his own Freedom of Information request in, saying he wants to see about if there's any communication between the governor's top aides and the top aides in the Obama campaign to try and prove that this may have been done at the behest of the Obama administration. The Patrick people say they're going to be happy to fulfill the request. Something, in fact, that they say the Romney people never did, that they didn't release emails when they were in the governor's office.
Well,
they're saying they're going to
do an even and fair exchange. Willard, 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 you never cease to amaze me. Glenn Johnson, thanks for your time tonight. I want to bring in Maria Teresa Kumar, Executive Director of Voto Latino and an MSNBC contributor, and Amanda Turco, Senior Political Reporter for the Huffington Post. Thanks to both of you for being here. Maria, let me start with you, Maria Teresa. One question here is, what could Romney and his staff be hiding, in your opinion, if anything?
That he's too much of a moderate Republican for the extreme base, right? This is exactly what we forget, is that just 5 years ago, he was actually pro-gay marriage and pro-choice. And while he was in the governor's office, he actually passed universal health care for Massachusetts residents. So maybe he has too much of a fingerprint of how moderate he truly is, number one. Number two, I could also see it as a problem for the Tea Party. What they believe in is that the government is truly about them, and it's about the people. So the fact that he's destroying or actually deleting public records that could actually give a trail of where his stance really is must keep them, give them some sort of unease that he cannot be trusted. And it really fits into this narrative that he's a flip-flopper, that he basically is hiding behind a shield and no one really knows what he stands for. Now,
Amanda, when I got up early this morning, I read a statement from Jonathan Gruber, the man who helped Romney create the Romney Care legislation in Massachusetts. And he says, and I'm going to show it to our viewers, this is Romney's architect of Romney Care. He said the same effing bill. He just can't have his cake and eat it too. He can try to draw distinctions and stuff. He's just lying. And when he's referring in that profane way to a bill, he's talking about President Obama's bill is the same as what Romney's doing. So I'm not raising this Boston Globe story to suggest they're hiding something illegal, but maybe what Maria Teresa is saying, they don't want a record of the flip-flopping and the stances that he once took that now he's taking differently. Do you think he's hiding something like what Gruber's saying?
Well, it certainly raises a lot of questions, which is, why did they hide these emails? Healthcare certainly would be in these emails. It was the signature achievement while Romney was governor. He was probably praising the individual mandate since it was a very important part of his plan. Perhaps he was even talking with Democrats about it, and probably not what the conservative base would like to hear now. And so was Romney thinking of this? Were his aides thinking ahead, saying, look, he might want to run for president and he will need to run to appeal to Republicans? We don't really know because those emails aren't out there and they're not really saying.
Now, Maria Teresa, you may think that I've called Willard a flip-flop, and I have. But let me show you, Republicans even feel
that's right,
that he's a flip-flopper. These polls in Iowa, 47% feel he's a flip-flopper. In New Hampshire, 43%. Iowa, 48% says Willard will say or do anything to win. In New Hampshire, 43% say that Willard would say or do anything to win. And you know what? These are Republicans that are being polled. These are all just Republicans. So I think that when you have that kind of burden to overcome, you might not want people to have much of a record on what you said in the past.
I think you're right, and I think that's not wrong. And the fact that Mitt Romney cannot catch a break and break over 29% approval rating or 22%, whatever, that range, really says that they have an enthusiasm for everybody but him. And that's, I think, what the Republican Party really should keep an eye on. The fact that they were so confident coming into the 2012 election that they were going to have a grassroots Tea Party base that's going to get fired up behind a candidate, but now it's evenly split with everybody but him. Yes, he can go ahead and be the Republican nominee, but are they going to fire up the pace for the Tea Party to come out and vote for him? I don't think so. And I think that's what has everybody scratching their head. And that's why Newt Gingrich is increasingly looking like an attractive candidate. But he himself has his own baggage, both personally and on professionally, of whether or not he can actually carry the presidency. So it's going to be it's a tough field right now for the Republican Party just in general.
Amanda, is it possible with Willard? I mean, we've seen every week a different, or every other week, a different person rising up with momentum. It's clearly giving indication Republicans just don't want Willard. How can he ever get over this 29% if he can't convince the Republicans of his authenticity?
I think he's just hoping to ride it out. He wants to be the tortoise in the race. The others are the hare. They will make big headlines each week. He won't do that, but they will make big headlines. They'll fizzle out. They might have a controversy like Herman Cain and the sexual harassment allegations, Rick Perry having his oops moment in the debate. They're hot one week, they're not the next. And Mitt Romney just wants to be that tortoise going along, building up his supporters and saying, look, I'm reliable. I may be more moderate, but I can go against Obama. And I think that is the strategy he's trying to do to get himself through this primary.
Do you think, Maria Teresa, that in the end that he will win by default because everyone that they raise as the anti-Romney just seems to implode?
I think so, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's not paying attention so much to the Iowa caucuses. He realizes that if he spends any time there, then it indicates to the media that he actually might win. And if he comes in second or third by not doing anything in Iowa, then he actually has a shot at the presidency, and he can control that media narrative. I think one of the things that he's also challenged with, though, is that sure, he can come out and be the Republican nominee, but every single candidate right now has a war chest that is going to really make a dent in his own war chest when it comes to becoming the Republican nominee against Obama. And I think that's what's making the Mitt Romney a little nervous, and not surprising why he's going after these jabs with this whole story of the Boston Globe, trying to blame the Obama administration with why they're disclosing this. So,
Maria Teresa and Amanda, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
They have nothing on the president, so they're attacking him by distorting the truth.